Good, how you doing?
Thanks. When we first spoke to you, you were still pretty new here. I guess now that you've got some time to acclimate, what are your thoughts on the offense been? How's that kind of stood out to you for a few days of practice?
Yeah, it's been great. Being here over the summer, just getting to know the guys, getting to bond with the coaches, getting to know the offense. I love the schemes. I love what Coach Malzahn's doing. I love the guys, the way they work, the way they compete. There's truly a drive in the sense of desperation to be great. So we're just continuing to try and build that and build on that so that we can be great this season.
Without being in pads, you being a physical runner, this is supposed to be a downhill physical running attack. What is accomplished for you guys in that role in the last 2 days when you're not in pads? What are you guys trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's hard for everybody, honestly, without pads. That's real football with pads. But, still getting the opportunity to get out there and get moving, kind of get your feet back up underneath you, get back into the rhythm of things, start, knowing how the tempo of practice is going to be, establish some of those key factors. It's crucial before you get the pads on, so that when you get the pads on, you're ready to go. You're flying around. You know what you're going to do. So, just being able to establish that, get ready for that, understand, what the coaches expect, was the expectations, what the standards that we're upholding, and then, when we get pads on, just continuing to improve on that.
How excited are you, though, for the pads?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. That's the best part. Go through the whole summer just running and lifting and doing gassers, and you just all you want to be here is play football. So finally the time to get the pads on and really do what you do and be able to compete. It's exciting.
What stood out to you about the whole entire group of running backs? I guess personality standpoint, and now you got some kind of football skills you've been able to show the last few days from a skill set perspective as well.
Yeah, they're all really talented. Rowe's he's a great back. He's a smart guy, old vet. He knows what he's doing. He's a pro, do everything right. Same with Keziah, same thing. Cam, Cam's doing well. For being as young as he is. He was thrown into a role last year, but he's continuing to show that maturity and being able to step up. And same thing with Oos. Oos is doing great. Excited to see him. He's doing well as a freshman. I wasn't anywhere near there my freshman year. I was tripping over myself, but he's doing great. He's attacking everything. And same with all the other running backs. Zay's doing great. JJ, all those guys. Sam. It's exciting to be in that room. It's a competitive room, a lot of depth. So, we're all pushing each other, all trying to help each other to become better, and it's great to be a part of.
In a scheme like this that is so run-heavy, how important is it when you're out there knowing that the guys behind you have the ability to come in if needed to kind of spark something for you guys?
Yeah, it's really putting that selfish side behind you and, really thinking about the team. The team you want to win. And, whoever that is out there on the field, needs to be able to execute and be able to do that. And, that's what we want to see. We want to see whoever's out there, the standards up here, it doesn't drop when somebody else comes in. It's got to stay up there. So, having that depth and having everybody, I'm not just, selfish and working on myself. We're pushing everybody. We're pushing everybody to get to that level, get to that standard. If something happens, God forbid someone goes down, or even, we're subbing in players. That's pretty realistic as well. So, having those guys and having that depth is crucial.
What is it that ultimately appealed to you about Gus Mills on offense?
Yeah, I played against his offense when I was at Oklahoma, UCF, and it's exciting. It's big explosive plays, downhill running. I love the inside zone. I love the creativity too. He's willing to attack the field everywhere on the field. Run the ball, deep threats, quick game, whatever it is. He's willing to attack it. So, having that, versatility and being able to do all of those things, it's been great.
Anything else for Gavin?
Do you have a feeling at all about whether or not Coach Malzahn wants at some point to have like a guy he can rely on, just somebody who can fill possibly the role of being like the guy, or is this always going to be a by committee kind of approach?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure all coaches want that guy, that they can rely on and trust. But I don't think it hurts having multiple guys, 2, 3 guys, whatever it is, that you can trust. It makes their job hard, but it also makes it easy, because they can trust and they know whoever's out there is going to get the job done. It's just a matter of putting those people in the right places. So, and that's really what fall camp's about, being able to, see who's taking those next steps and, be able to compete and see who's that guy that you can trust, or, who are those guys that you can trust, or whatever it may be.
Nick?
obviously you have the team goals, the team aspirations, right? Do you have any personal aspirations or improvements that you want to see from yourself this year?
Yeah, definitely. Just continuing to grow in all aspects of my game. One thing I love about Coach Malzahn, getting the running back involved in the passing game, so being able to be versatile in that, continuing to be physical, running the ball, blocking, whatever it is, and really just being whatever I need to be for the team. Coming in off the summer, I didn't have spring ball to kind of do it, so I'm just coming in competing, taking every rep, taking every opportunity that I can get, and, trying to fit in wherever I can.
Did you look at all about who's going to play offensive line here when you made your decision? I guess what's been your impression of those guys in front of Coach Irving?
Yeah, so I saw a lot of those guys when I came here on the visit. Coach Malzahn showed me some of their film, and from the schools they transferred from, and so far they've been great. It's a veteran group up there. They know what they're doing. They communicate well, and that's really the big thing for O-line is to be able to communicate and mesh well. They all have to be on the same page because a lot of times fronts are changing, defense is changing, so they got to be able to think all on the same page like that. So having that group and having those older guys, those vets that understand the game and do it, they're doing well, and there's a lot of talent depth as well, and those older guys are teaching some of those younger guys, bringing them along, adding to that depth factor. But, it's been great. They've been great so far.
You said Usman was way ahead when you were a freshman. What does he do that makes him ahead? Is it like how he is physically, or is it how he's in the film room, combination of all that?
Yeah, definitely, physically stands out for sure. I think he's like around 220. I was like 180, 190 coming in, so I was a little light, but he's just a physical player. He's fast. He trusts himself. He goes out there and he attacks everything. He's not. Usually you see freshmen kind of hesitant and kind of backing off, but he's going out there and attacking. He's going out there and trying to get what he can get. So that's been impressive. He still of course has some things to work on, but he's growing for sure.
Anything else? Awesome. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you, guys.